Chair Steenblock.
Here.
Commissioner Ramseth.
Here.
Commissioner Steenblock.
Here.
Commissioner Geyer.
Here.
Commissioner Moorhead.
Here.
Commissioner Gary.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
All right, and then we would be looking for an approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Gary?
Motion by Gary
Seconded by
Gary, Tim.
and a second by
Jason.
Commissioner Steenblock.
Okay, Steve Block.
I guess I'm gonna have to get a little faster.
All right, so a motion
All right, any
by Commissioner Gary and a second by Commissioner Jason Steenblock.
Any discussion on that? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. I don't see anybody here for open forum this evening. Did you get any requests?
I do not have any open forum submissions tonight.
Okay. All right, so then moving along, we're on the regular agenda 5A, which is approval of the meeting minutes for the July 21st meeting.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on that? Jamie, I sent you one little
A one-word typo,
change. Yep.
correct.
So, hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that-
And we just have a couple of members that were absent, so would have to abstain
Oh,
from
yeah,
approval.
that's right.
So Commissioner Moorhead and Commissioner Miller were absent.
Kind of forgot.
That's okay.
Abstain.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, moving on to 5B, we have the park maintenance and improvement purchases.
All right, Chair and Commissioners of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, included in your agenda packet, I have a staff memo prepared that outlines park maintenance and improvements for the remainder of this year. We talked about at our July meeting that it's a good time in the fall to really look at what our fund balance is for this line item in our annual operating budget. So currently we have $28,566 remaining yet in 2021 for our parks maintenance and improvements. And just as a reminder that these funds are in the budget and approved, and these dollars are allocated for any way we can make maintenance and improvements to our parks and trails in Forest Lake. Examples would be last year we were able to use some of that fund balance for new equipment at Bay Park that was a vacant lot. So that was a fiscally responsible and efficient way to make these park improvements with the funding that we have within our operating budget annually. So today we're going to look at that fund balance, or the amount we have available yet this year. And I did put together a table here of some of the things that are needs and things that we've talked about. And so the goal today is to, from a Parks Commission, look for a motion to approve these budget allocations. And these are pretty good estimates of what each item will cost and what the recommendation would be on some of the needs. And then that will leave us some money for some park improvements as well. From here today, we can have a brief conversation on park improvements, but for our October meeting, I could have some detailed quotes and pricing for you on how that is allocated. So I'll run through this quick and then turn it over to Parks Commission for approval. Garbage can dome lids at Fenway and Lakeside. We're looking at 3 of the garbage can dome lids for Fenway Park just due to the high volume of trash that is collected there. That we have a couple of garbage containers out there, but we're getting feedback from Public Works that they're filled often and overflowing, so 3 more would be a recommendation there from the Public Works Department. And additionally, start with 5 new ones at Lakeside Memorial Park. The ones that we'd be ordering are a 30-gallon. Right now we have a smaller garbage container throughout Lakeside Memorial Park, and a lot of the containers at Lakeside Memorial Park no longer have the dome covering on them, which then fills with water and really makes it heavy and difficult from a maintenance perspective. So there's more than 5 there that are needed, but we thought if we started in the higher concentrated areas throughout the park, that'll be a nice improvement needed at that facility. So that is a need, so we're proposing the 8 garbage cans. Again, it's an estimated cost because there's some shipping involved as well, so that's an estimated cost. Bike racks, 1 for Fenway and 1 for Cedar. Those are just nice improvements. People park their bikes just anywhere or lay them on the ground, so simple improvement to those facilities. Park use has been up over the last 2 years, so allocating $10,000 of our budget to go around to all our city parks and top off the loose fill surfacing, whether it's the rubber mulch or engineered wood fiber chips, is a important piece to our maintenance so that we are compliant with safety regulations for surfacing. So what we would do is we'd have one of our companies that we work with would go around to our parks and make sure that they are meeting the standards for surfacing, the depths that are required. So allocate $10,000 of our budget to do that, so we're ready for the spring. And then again, lastly, the park improvements, we'd have about $11,500. And one thing I'm working on, we talked about Clear Lake Park. We've had some resident feedback, and I've met with Commissioner Ramseth. The equipment that's there, even though it was put in 2014, the equipment is not very engaging for all age groups, and so we're looking at some options of how we can make some improvements there. I did meet on site today with one of our playground manufacturers, and with the given container space that we have, we can't add anything additional right now due to use zones of the existing equipment. So what we're looking at is scenarios of, could we remove a couple pieces of equipment, and by that I mean just a simple rope climber or a structure to climb on and relocate that to another park. That would free up half of that container space for something else new and maybe a little more engaging. So that's just one example of a park improvement that we could look at for this $11,500. She's going to provide some scenarios of what that could look like. I also have received some requests from the Baseball Association to continue our partnership with Cooling Camp Park. They want to continue with helping fund some of these projects, but right now costs for other materials are really high. Fence costs are up and other things are up, so we really need more information from them, in a quote on what some of these projects would look like before we could really consider, what that investment from the city would be. So there's, a few more where I could go on about volleyball courts and other things, but I think Clear Lake Park was identified as a nice project to consider. So I think these budget allocations, then that would get us at about that $28,000. I feel like it's representing a few different areas of needs and also the opportunity to make parks. So seeking approval to use these budget allocations and continue moving forward with some of the initial purchases, and then come back in October with some drawings you can look at for Clear Lake Park and some pricing on some of those other mentioned projects. With that, looking for approval tonight and happy to take any questions.
I'll make a motion to approve it, and then I have questions after.
Sure.
Second.
I'm just going to help out, which is Jackie, so if you don't mind too, Terry, if you're a motion by Commissioner Moorhead and a second by Commissioner Steenblock.
We have a motion and a second, so we'll open it up for any discussion.
I was just wondering, the garbage tome libs, is that the type that you push one side and opens the other side? I mean, it's not a tight container top.
It would be the ones we have at Fenway Park currently. Those have been really well received by the public works staff. They're really good quality, long lasting, and it doesn't have a push through. It's just an open.
You don't have to remove the lid.
Nope, you don't have to remove
Okay.
it or touch anything. There's two sides that have the open area where you can put your trash in.
Okay, and some of these ideas on the park improvements, we were talking to the young lady about the sand volleyball.
Yep.
Would this be a time when next October, we can talk about that a little bit too?
Yep.
My husband came up with a request that someone had mentioned to him, Frisbee golf. I know we've talked about that a lot in the past, but it, hasn't gone anywhere yet. And the neighbors at Shady Trails are still wanting us to have them come or talk about a neighborhood get-together that they can help us clean that park up so that we don't just look at it as a mess, which it is now. So I'm just throwing those things out before we spend all the money. There's,
Yep, and I
other
appreciate you
ideas.
bringing that up. Shady Trails actually is one that I'm going to bring to the October meeting. I'm currently pricing that out with Public Works. I took some pictures there. It could be a really nice nature park. Right now, there's not a actual path through the trail area. It's just grass. That's hardly even, people wouldn't know if you walked up to it that it's a path. And so looking at even making that like a 10-foot wide wood chip trail, quote unquote, so that people can have that connection and then look at some picnic tables and improvements there. So that one is one I will bring with more of a package, pictures and cost breakdown of what that trail improvement could be.
And
Because I think
again,
that would be pretty affordable, a nice project to do too.
and what the neighbors could even assist us with that. If they see movement, they'll be very excited about that. They used to have a trail, wood chips, but the bikers came in and the trail and the picnic table went out and it was not workable anymore. But that was exactly the vision we had for that picnic table, maybe a couple bird feeders, because it's an older neighborhood, and to have someone just be able to walk through there and sit down and relax and read a book or something. So that's good that it's going to be on there. Thank you.
I'd like to say that with regard to the Clear Lake Park, I was contacted again today by residents and their interest in having something, as Jamie described, more engaging in there rather than the little things that are there today.
Yeah.
So they maintain their interest in having something improved.
Yeah, and from conversations on site today, like I said, in about a week or so, I'll get some designs and options. There's a couple things that have come to mind for myself of things I've seen that would be, I think, a great fit there that offer more play, levels of play to them. So within that $11,500 budget, I think that's really a reasonable, it seems like that's a reasonable project. So I'll have some pricing options, like I said, in the next week or so, and think that could be a good consideration.
Maybe we could get some pictures too of the sand volleyball. That would also be a very low maintenance or low expense to put in, and certainly is well used at Belts all the time. So maybe we could just, I don't know what the price would be or how much it would be, but if we could get some information, that'd be great.
Sure, no problem.
Shady Trails?
Where are you
No.
thinking of putting the sand volleyball?
For Clear-
Where did Becky, I can't remember.
I believe it was Preserve Park, and so the conversation I had with the resident was that currently it's it's an open space, green space with a picnic table. So while it's a low cost amenity we can add to the park, there's also the details of installation if it's, if you have to put it in the ground and, what's the big picture for Preserve Park instead of just plopping in the volleyball court. And that was understood of, maybe it's part of, what's the master plan for that park or what's the vision for that park so that we do it all at once instead of just going and putting the volleyball court net in and installing it in the ground with cement, I can't think of the term, but, putting it in the ground, and is it more of a permanent thing or is it a temporary thing? So looking at some of those considerations, and so that was what I had talked about.
Good, and it might be good for some of us to go out there and just look at the design because certainly we could put one volleyball thing in, not disturb the whole rest of the park. But I'm not envisioning it right now, so I'd have to go out there and look at it, because there again, the neighbors want to come forward and help in any way they can or anything, so we don't want to lose them when they're wanting to help. That's it for me.
Any other discussion? So hearing no discussion, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the recommended park maintenance and improvement staff memo? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
Just need a little more encouragement.
and that motion carries then. Okay, so we are on to 5C, which is the Belts Park final scope of work.
All right, so Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, for this agenda item tonight regarding the Belts Park Master Plan and our final scope of work that I do have included tonight. I just will kind of back up just to give a little recap of where we've been and where we are and where we're going so everyone's on the same page. So just backing up a little bit, we did start a master plan project for Belts Park in 2019, working with Bolton and Mink. Went through the process, had community open house on site, got a lot of really good feedback. Survey results were outstanding. I think we had 450 respondents pretty quickly. So Bolton and Mink was really happy with that. We did have one meeting with the St. Peter's Church regarding parking, got pretty far in the process and ended up with a cost estimate of $1.8 million for park improvements for safety, accessibility, and improvements to Belts Park. So that's where we're at with the process. Just with capacity resources, I had to shift gears quite a bit in the end of 2019. I had 2 different contracts and agreements with the golf course and the facilities. So had to shift gears there. And then we went into the whole COVID year of, restrictions and challenges with that. So that's kind of where we've been, where we are. Commissioner Ramseth, who serves on our subcommittee for capital improvements, we've had 1 meeting to talk about the master plan, to just, it was probably about a month ago, to really re-engage that conversation of, bringing it back to the table. And from there, the next step is really just reaching out to Bolton and Mank and saying, we need to finalize a master plan to get it to council for approval. And so I met with Bolton and Mank and received a final cost estimate so they can walk us through these final steps. Just things that we need to look at is that $1.8 million project. We don't have funding right now to support that whole project, so we could do, they did recommend phases to that. We certainly could look at phases, but we also don't want to do a portion of a project and then not be able to come back and complete it if we, the funding isn't there. So there's definitely a funding component to this. Where we are now is I recently did reach out to the Rotary group and reconnected with Susan Young, the president of the Rotary, just to let her know that this is back on the table and our priority for our capital projects. So now where we're at is Bolton and Mank can help us kind of get through a final master plan. Some things to think about or maybe reconsider is the hockey rink. I know that Belts has always been a pleasure skating park. Do we need the hockey rink there for $150,000? So should we rethink that piece of it? And what else could we just take one more look at to rethink to still meet our goals of developing a nice improvement to the community? Accessibility is one of the biggest challenges there. And one of the biggest community feedback items was a restroom facility, picnic shelter, warming house that people could, youth could also enjoy and use as well. So I think we still can hit on the key items, but I think one more look at the master plan, get to a final yes or no on all the amenities that we're providing, get that approved through the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, and then ultimately City Council for a final, here's our master plan with a revised, updated cost analysis. Hopefully that will get our costs down, so then we can review funding available and have it be an obtainable project, sooner than later. Obviously, we really need the funding piece to do the project. So with that said, this is the start of the final steps here. Bolton and Mank did provide a final scope of work and a cost associated with that, which would be up to $7,000. Maybe not that much, depending on what level of updates we need. I will be scheduling a meeting with the capital improvements plan, which is Commissioner Ramseth, Commissioner Miller, and Commissioner, I think Gary, or Steenblock. The group will meet to talk through some of these additional items, and then by our October meeting can have an updated master plan to bring here for full commission review and final discussion on amenities. So tonight is just approval to move forward in this process, understanding that this is where we're going. We're going to a final design, rethinking of any final changes, and between myself and Bolton and Mank, we'll update that cost analysis to be more fine-tuned to actual costs of what they will be in 2022.
So is this where I can ask a question or do I have to wait?
You can ask a question anytime.
All right. So I was looking at these numbers, and I had a couple thoughts. So the building that line 8, the new, construct a new building, is that gonna be fairly exotic, or is it just a shelter, or what is it? Because I noticed they're asking, or they're projecting $500,000 just for that building.
That's a great question, and the answer that I have is it's when they initially went through this process, I think that was just a ballpark number, because a facility it depends on, you pay for what you get. So like what we have to determine what level of detail or amenities do we want with that. You can get a pretty elaborate building for $1 million. You could do, a standard one for maybe $500,000, but you can also do a pretty basic one for probably a little less. So they had thrown out an arbitrary number. It's really up to us in our budget, you know, in this next step of what are the amenities we want, obviously restrooms, but is it a warming house? Is it serving as an indoor-outdoor facility that people can rent year-round? Obviously, the more advanced we go, the more it's gonna cost, and then, obviously, then the project total will go up from that, so.
Cause I guess the other thing I was thinking about, and they're projecting a $300 square foot cost. But I know that at the high school, you know, they build a house every year. I mean, I realize that you need plumbers, you need electricians, and those people have to be licensed. But, you know, has anybody explored that idea of having the construction class come out and do that work, the basic format of putting the building together?
We haven't, but that is something that we can consider. I think it's really gonna come down to what this commission, what your vision is for that building. Cause I think it can be, you know, if it's gonna serve multi-purposes, you know, that's really gonna be up to the commission of the level of detail in that building and how elaborate that will be. Another thing that we'll have to keep in mind is just cost of everything, you know, potentially increasing, you know, monthly or annually. So, you know, that's part of this next step, so maybe not tonight of, I won't be able to provide, here's our exact cost for this. But approving to move forward, we're on this track now. By the end of this year, we can get the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission a final master plan and present that for council by, you know, their January. That would line us up to pursue grant funding. The Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant is due March 30th of 22. And then it also gives us some time to, once we have a final updated cost estimate on this, seek other funding sources, see if we have the funding, and then determine if it's a phased approach or not. You know, if it's, you don't, and what the priorities, obviously the accessibility, improvements to the playground, things like that, we can prioritize the work. So, in the building, but what if we don't have enough funding? You know, you don't want to fall short and not be able to come back and then complete the project. Does that make sense?
Well, and then another thought I had is that, and this has been a number of years, but a lot of the aluminum bleachers that you see around town were part of a transaction between Pepsi and the school district. And again, could that be maybe tapped into and say, you know, hey, you know, can Pepsi come out and put in some, you know, bleachers? Because I see that, you know, you've got some bleachers and some, you know, tables and stuff like that, and maybe that could be incorporated that way.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, part of the next steps. Like right now, just at a quick glance, looking at miscellaneous line items, number 18 through, let's say, 23, for example. A lot of these could probably come out of this capital plan, and those are items like picnic tables and grills and benches. We could use our general fund maintenance and improvements budget that we just talked about. We have $50,000 there annually, so we could potentially eliminate some of those items or get them donated, find other ways to fund those projects. And just one more comment, like we could probably look at other areas to eliminate some of these costs. And I've done some of that exercise just to kind of see where it would take us, but that would be more I could present in October when I get some more information from Bolton and Mink. But I think there's an opportunity to scratch maybe $500,000 at least from what we see here. And I think just even that makes it a little more obtainable of a goal to get to that finish line, knowing our current park dedication funds, what we're expecting, et cetera. So,
And then,
yeah, so we'll fine tune this in this process.
And then does Bolton Mink, do they let the bids out, or how do we determine who's doing, say, concrete and things of that nature?
I know some of that will probably fall on city staff, potentially our director of public works. You know, I might do an RFP for the playground equipment. So I think it'll be a combination, but I know city staff, I'm sure city staff will do a large portion of that in conjunction with our city engineer.
So I guess that's what I was just wondering about, is that, you know, if you talk to like Semstone or Knife River, if they would, you know, look at a donation to the city or something of that nature.
Yeah, so if this gets approved tonight, you're on to the next steps of
Right.
figuring all of that out. So you're on the right mindset. This is to bring it back to the full commission. From here on out, we're gonna work with Bolton Bank. We're gonna get to a final master plan. We're gonna have subsequent subgroup meetings, individual meetings, group meetings, whatever that looks like. I think we know the community's interest in this, so I don't think we need to re-engage community. It's just fine tuning what the specific amenities will be and what those specific costs are. So it's really getting down to that. Right now, what we see for the cost estimate is definitely some arbitrary numbers, right? And then obviously costs might have changed. So we're gonna pick, we want this piece of playground equipment, we want this particular building development, we want, this additional amenity for the teenagers. We're gonna get those specific pieces picked out so we have a cost associated with that.
So I have just a question on
sure.
kind of sequence of events.
Sure.
So I've just seen that we, at one time, did some conceptual drawings. And then we're gonna send it back to Bolton Mink, but it sounds like our subcommittee has some work to do before we do that in terms of priorities, or what do we really want that building to look like? And do we want a hockey rink or just free skating, which would be my vote, free skating, but, is that what you're seeing?
Correct.
And then we would have that done, and then we would have information by our October meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
so I'm just pulling up a calendar here quick, but yes, our October meeting, just with, let me just give me 1 second here. So our October meeting is October 19th, but in 3 weeks from now, I will have all my packet materials are gonna be needed, just with the conference that I'm attending. So in 3 weeks from now, Bolton and Mank should be able to get back to me with some information and get a subcommittee to just start that conversation. I don't think it's gonna be extremely in-depth, but I think, making the recommendation of, let's eliminate the hockey rink. Let's forego some of this exterior fencing. Let's remove these items from the cost analysis. Let's combine these two items together, so work through it. Come to the commission in October, and from there, provide any feedback on those overall changes. And then from there, if we agree to that high-level adjustment, we continue with this playground equipment, this building, and put those costs together, which I would say is more of like a November project timeline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then from that initial community feedback, did we have a sense for priorities if it comes down to phases?
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll send that out, that survey result, but I thought it was very clear, and I think others would agree, that the community building was really important, basketball courts. I think the new playground was really important as well. So
Okay.
there were results on that I think if we had to make decisions based on budget and priorities and amenities, I think we'll be able to still meet the needs of the community.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, go
Okay,
ahead.
Commissioner Ramseth?
And we need to meet with the church
Church, yes.
and to see if there's parking available, because if there's no parking available from the church, then are we going to have to use parkland for parking?
Correct.
So that's a key factor in this whole thing.
Yes, and I'll probably pull in our city administrator too. I know he recently worked on a parking agreement with Stella's for Castlewood, so we have something already in place that we could potentially model. So I think that'll be a good conversation now. Before it was, is there the interest? And there was, but it's now the formal agreement language piece. So re-engaging that conversation, and if that's the case, then working with Administrator Casey to formalize some agreement with them for the parking. But that is a key point, because we will have to know if we need to incorporate the parking into our plan or not. Commissioner Moorhead, yeah.
I know it's been like 2 years since we've actually met with him, but part of his concern was the bathroom.
Correct.
And if I remember right, the survey came back, it was overwhelming. Betty will tell you how many balls went in the bottle or whatever was up there as far as that building. And so I don't know how much input we can all have into the subcommittee to let them know what we feel, before, because if they just have to meet and don't have any input from the rest of the committee, then these months come and go so fast, you just can't even believe it. I mean, a minute ago now it was October, and then you mentioned it would be by November. And so
Yeah, these definitely, master plans can take 2 to 4 years just to get them figured out and
That's my
then
other
funding.
question.
So they take a long time to do, and that's not just in Forest Lake, that's standard for park developments. They take years to do.
Well, being my age, you don't have all those years, so we gotta kind of push the fast button. But they also have another 1,500 for project management and meetings. So what did we get out of the first, and I love Bolton Mank, but what did we get out of the first master plan that wouldn't be good enough for us to look at now and then update, then find out what it is we wanna do and then update those numbers? I mean, there's a lot of money here to pay them to come back and do what I thought they did before.
Yeah, and that's why it says up to 7,000, because we might not, like, we may be able as a group to say, let's eliminate A, B, C, and D, and really there won't be a lot of exchange back and forth. So this is what they had provided as a cost estimate. Again, it's billed hourly, so it's not a guaranteed $7,000, and so I can kind of have some control limits on that and I'm pretty thorough in saying, okay, here's all the information you need, just make the one diagram update based on our feedback from the Parks Commission. So I will be very strategic in that, so it's not 10 revisions back and forth. You know, the first time when we worked with them, there were multiple meetings, there was a lot of community engagement, there was, they had to go on site to do measurements and specifications. There was a lot of details that went into that first round, so I think we're 95% way down the field and just have that last little bit, give it one more look, make one more, hey, let's change these few things and refine the cost. So it's billed at hourly as needed, and like I said, it may not need to be that elaborate of work with them, so.
Well, and again, I was thinking that how would we be able to get our input into the subcommittee? At one time, I'd asked you if we could get a list of the commissioners' phones or emails or whatever, and you, of course, said that you wouldn't be able to give that without their permission. But if we got their permission, would we be able to then email me, or anybody, email them? I have one instance where the people have been talking again for years about opening the pleasure skating on the lake. And what would that entail? So if I wanted to give input, I would probably say something about, the hockey rink, we can see from our vantage point, isn't maybe the pleasure rink isn't necessarily there, but could we look at something else? So I don't know, I just feel like if we just wait another month and then they may or may not meet, and then we come back and we haven't had a chance to have.
Yeah, anytime you're welcome to, if you see any buildings that you like or any amenities that you want or would like to see within, we know the building's a priority with restrooms. I know that's one of the top priorities. So as you're looking around at other communities, or if you feel like doing, looking to do some research to see, like, oh, I really like that building, or I like this feature of that building, you can send them over and I'll share them with everybody. You're welcome to, meet with individuals. We just can't have a quorum of the commission to do that, but certainly, engage and provide feedback, send me links, send me details, anything like that is helpful as we fine tune, so that the more information I receive now, then we can bring a more complete, like, this is what we want to go with to the full commission.
I do think that the subcommittee, I'm looking at the survey results because I happen to have it in my folder here, but I think that it'll be critical to keep in mind what the survey participants said, and the playground amenity was one of the items. Restrooms was the number 2 item on that list. A time challenge course and an enhanced picnic shelter were the top 4 items on the list. So I think regardless of what we do, we need to take into consideration the community feedback and try to work in those types of things. The subcommittee isn't going to design the building, and they're not going to, it's not going to be a final. So typically what happens with the subcommittees is they meet as a subcommittee so that we're not spending hours doing that work here. They bring their proposal back to this team, and then we would take a look at it and have the opportunity to adjust it. So I would see that there would be some type of concept and recommendation for us to look at in October, using this feedback and anything that you guys share with them. And then we go from there, but nothing will be finalized until we have the opportunity to all look at it.
I think it's just
We-
important to know that making sure we have funding and what we come up with, we can fund, and being strategic in that, because even though we do have the funds in the park dedication, this is brought back to the table. We don't have funds right now to do the whole project.
Right.
And so we have to keep that in mind, and then from there, a decision for the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission is, if you decide to do the whole project when we have the funds, or is it 2 phases, what phase 1 and phase 2, well, what would those phases be? Because I don't want to say you don't want to, but depending on the decisions made, the fund balance could be back down to 0, and then if we are relying strictly on park dedication fees, we could be waiting for years again to have any funds to do other projects. So that's just part of the big picture of, we have a lot of work to be done, and if we focus on this project, which is identified as a priority, you just have to make sure with the funding that the decisions are, how you decide to spend the funds, if it's all at once or phased, because this project could deplete our fund balance for park dedication. And then we're kind of back to the unknown of how many years until we have funding again. So just that's the big picture strategically.
So will the subcommittee then come with that recommendation of if we need to do phases, which we probably will?
Of course, we decided that a long time ago.
Will they come in October with that recommendation of, here we would think generally would be our phased approach?
Yeah, I think that's great conversation there. And then for final, obviously the full commission is to make that, take action and decide on that.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I think the more that they can bring as a proposal to look at, I think will be helpful to just make this conversation, to facilitate that, to say, are we on the right track? Is there anything else anybody would like to see?
I also think once we have a final plan here, there would be potentially some opportunities for grants,
Yeah.
which may impact the timing and phasing of it as well,
Right.
potentially.
We have to start
depending.
somewhere. It
Right.
just feels like at some point here, we just need
Yeah.
to have some
Something.
forward momentum, and
Yep.
if we need to adjust, we adjust.
And so that's what, with approval of this tonight to move forward, it'd be up to this amount hourly rate. Bolton and Mank will come to a fall park meeting. They should have some preliminary more, information. They sent this over. They can't go until we say, yes, let's continue and move forward. But that's the outline, it's at the table. We're gonna continue to move forward, now until January when we get it to council for approval. So that would be our goal, and keep working on it in these next couple months. So, and then hopefully we, like Commissioners or Chair Steenblock said, and I agree, is that grant is due March 30th. Then we have a final plan that we can present to people. Whereas in the beginning, we didn't, before we even started the master plan, it's hard to, provide to groups in the community of here's what we're funding or here's the project. So we'll have a very clear picture on what that will look like.
Just one final, because
Sure.
now I'm confused. The subcommittee will meet, and they'll come up with a recommendation. And then Bolton Mink is gonna come to that meeting and then revise all the plans, so then it'll be the following weekend before Bolton Mink would have anything at all for us to look at as far as big projects and prices.
I'll send out a timeline, but it will work out that the commission subcommittee will meet so that before I give anything to Bolton and Mank, we're on the same page of here's what we think should be updated. I don't want Bolton and Mank to have to go back and forth multiple times. So
That
we'll
was my
review it one
point.
more time, saying, hey, where do we think we can cut some costs, or what do we maybe need or not need to still meet the demands of the community or community interest. So,
Well, and they have to hear what the subcommittee says before they can do
Correct.
anything.
yep.
And so I'm glad to say that we could individually, just if we have any ideas,
Mhm.
to go forward then. I'm with Betty. I mean, we just can't keep telling people it's going to be done next month or next year or whatever. We have to have something to see.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we haven't had, right now, we still don't even have funding for like phase 1. So we couldn't have really completed anything yet to date, other than having the building picked out. So, we're getting there, so.
Okay.
Steve, could you send out the survey results again?
I will send the survey results out, and then I'll be reaching out to the group for a meeting hopefully next week for the subcommittee if schedules allow.
In one of the past meetings, we had talked about, where like the mini storage isn't charged park dedication fee. Has anything been done, and maybe whatever has to happen, come up with an ordinance or something that we can start charging mini storages?
We don't have any further information at this time. Our zoning administrator is no longer, he just left the city for another position. So we're transitioning that role right now. So as soon as I can get some information, we're transitioning right now in that zoning department. So unfortunately, I don't have not received any additional information on that, and we'll continue to try to get something here as soon as I can for you. I do have it slated in our October meeting to talk about our fee schedules, so hopefully I can get some answers by then to talk about park dedication fees is on that list of what we're charging currently and where we're gonna go, so I can follow up with you on that. But I think we still just have a motion in a second.
I'd like to make a motion to.
Did we already have one?
Did
I
we-
think we
did we
already
have-
have
is
a
there one?
motion.
I don't
I'm
think
sorry.
so, not on this
I
one.
didn't think there was, but I don't.
No, okay, sorry, I just thought
That's okay.
that happened.
I'll make a motion for the preliminary estimate of the construction costs for Belts Park master plan.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for, to proceed with the Bolton Mank to do the additional work to help us with the concept plans. Do we have any more discussion on that?
I don't think it's on that. So I'll wait, because I have a question of joining the meeting with the priest. I went to the original ones. I don't know who he had in the plans to go there, but if there's an opening, I'd be willing to go with that.
Sounds good,
I
thank
don't know
you.
if that was on this motion or not. Probably not.
It's additional discussion because it falls
Okay.
under this topic, so I think it was appropriate.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, motion carries. I believe I actually kept some notes together. All right, so we are on to number 5D, which is the park event application.
All right, so before you, we have a park event permit application that just came in for an event October 16th from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. at Lakeside Memorial Park. Given that this is music, bands, music entertainment and worship, and anticipated to be over 150 people, that would constitute an event in the park. So otherwise pretty straightforward. They might have some food trucks that they would be responsible for coordinating, and really, otherwise straightforward, other than they're looking to use the gazebo and some of the green space for this event on October 16th. So with that, seeking approval for this park event permit application.
Move approval of the application.
So we have a motion on approval of the application. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right, motion carries. Okay, so then we are on to agenda number 6A, which is community events for the winter 2021-2022.
All right, so Chair and members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, the discussion item tonight that we have is regarding our community events for winter of 2021-2022. So just a brief introduction to this, and then I'm just going to turn it over for preliminary discussion. Our next community event that we would have on the calendar is our tree lighting ceremony, which is our annual event that we do. In 2019, it was the first time that we held the event here at the City Center. A portion of it was here. We had photo opportunities with Santa. We had the community room upstairs with hot chocolate and cookies and crafts and a movie playing. That was really well received by the community, and I think that went well. And then we also did the tree lighting, obviously, at Lakeside Memorial Park. So it was mostly indoor, some outdoor component. We canceled last year due to COVID, and so we are starting to plan for that, and it would be Saturday, December 4th. So one point of discussion tonight is just really starting to gauge some commissioner feedback on what that event might look like, indoor, outdoor, plans for both, et cetera. I think we do still need to be cognizant of the COVID-19 situation. So that's one part of the discussion tonight. And then secondly, the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission identified a priority of having a winter community event. Years ago, the Forest Lake Area Chamber of Commerce led the Flake Festival in Forest Lake. And just over the years, that's kind of dwindled down and is not really an active event in the community currently. With that being a priority, I've had some preliminary conversations with 2 other groups in the community that are looking to do their own activity Saturday, February 19th, which would be the annual Rotary Plunge. And Kids Pro Ice is a snowboarding races that they are an individual group, so they're gonna do their snowboard races. So right now, that particular Saturday has got some natural synergy built in with other groups and partners in the community. So the second point of conversation for the community events is just starting to kind of gauge initial feedback. I think if it's a larger community event, we're gonna need a little more time to plan that one. Who's at the table? What is this gonna look like? You know, commissioners, do you think it's Flake Festival? Do we come up with a whole new, kind of just do our own new thing? So just looking for some preliminary feedback on that to see if what you're thinking, so we can start planning that one out. If it's gonna be a bigger community event, it's gonna take a couple months versus typically the tree lighting is, you know, I think if we have our plans in place by November 1st, we can start the communications plan on that. So just want to start really thinking about our winter events and kind of go from there. So go ahead, Commissioner Moorhead.
You talked about, I thought we were gonna have a subcommittee meeting as well on this subject. Is that now off the table or is still?
No, we still will. I just thought tonight, just for group discussion, because we haven't talked about it yet, so I just thought, why not see if anyone has any thoughts and to take to the commission. So if you don't, that's okay, and I'll meet with them, but just wanted to let you know that there's some synergy with that February 19th date. So is it just a one-day event for our community event? Is it a weekend? Is it a week long? Do we want to do the medallion hunt? So just a quick discussion tonight if anyone has any feedback, and then we will meet with the subcommittee to start fine-tuning some of the who's at the table and figure out some of those more detailed plans.
Well, there again, I'd really love to have some input from people if they just wanted to call or let us know or text you and pass it on so that we have fresh ideas from them as well, and then we can work to putting them together.
Mm-hmm.
See, Jamie, I've had some people ask me about doing like a skating rink down at Lakeside Park.
A lot.
You know, and was just wondering if that's a feasibility, or if there's just too much liability with bad ice and whatever. But I guess, you know, I was just thinking if a person could, you know, flood it and maintain it and have another nice event down in Lakeside Park area.
Yeah, I think it's feasible for this year with the resources planned out. I know last year it came up, I think, in December and just not a planned activity. There's actually quite a bit of a process that goes into, you know, if you're gonna, to your point about liability, if you're gonna have the ice, you need to make sure it's maintained and good ice conditions for skating. So there's some work that needs to be done there. And I know that when this came up last year, Public Works just wasn't staffed, and it was kind of late notice to plan for that. So if that's a vision the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission has for maintenance and improvements, I know there's feedback about shoveling the sidewalks throughout the park. That's not currently a maintenance task that we do. So maybe it's not the whole park, maybe it's that beach house area, you know, with access by the lake. You know, that's certainly, if that's a vision, we can look into doing that, I think.
Could we ask Dave to dig out, because last year Dave actually looked at it and gave us a detailed email of what it would, I remember seeing something, and I probably have it here, a detailed list of what it would take to have the ice there. Could we ask him to pull that back out and see whether or not, what it would take and whether or not he has the staff to make that happen this year?
Yes, I'll pull that up and get that.
I would think that having the time frame for skating on the lake, something like just the month of January, where you may be guaranteed cold enough weather to maintain it. Once in today's climate, once you get past January, you get a lot of melting and refreezing, which makes the ice very difficult. So if we had an abbreviated period for this, it'd perhaps be more palatable to the maintenance department as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good consideration to have us just the month of January, if anything.
Can the bathrooms be open in the winter?
We would have to do portables, I believe. The Public Works has to winterize the facilities, so I think they do that mid-October. They have to shut everything down for the winter. But I'll ask, but I think it's probably would be like a portable unit or whatnot.
Some kind of tenting for changing skates, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's all, I think part of that plan and vision, we'd have to, if, when you do something, then you have to think about all those different factors that you're bringing up, instead of just putting the ice down there, what's the experience gonna be for people? Are the sidewalks plowed? Is there seating? Are there facilities?
Yeah.
Is there lighting? Kind of all of the logistics that would go around with that, because then you do wanna make sure you're limiting any risk and liability if, that there's lights on and there's no issues with that.
It kind of sounds like we're making a lot more work and spending a lot more money out on Forest Lake versus just having our 3 rinks that we have. We're making more work, we're spending more money because now we have to have lights and plowed, and we have to have a shelter, and we have to have this and this and this. We have those 3 things that are available, and if residents want to go out and skate on Forest Lake, they're more than welcome to. It's just on their own behalf.
We did see a lot of that happen last year
Exactly,
with the
all on
weather.
their own.
I mean,
Yeah, we
People
had a
came
good
out
ice
and-
with not a lot of snow to start
Right,
the year, which
right.
isn't always the case, yeah.
right, so,
And this one goes way back to when Pat Gahn put the building and the music and the lighting and all that. That's when this really got exciting. And I wouldn't say add an additional one, but I'm thinking in my brain yet
No
that
fence.
Belts Park is not really maybe the place for it. You have a lot of problems too. It's supposed to be for entertainment, not hockey, and yet I go by it a lot, and there's hockey sticks out there. And someone said, well, it's a little kid, or it's just a couple of kids, and I said, then parents go by and they see the hockey sticks, and then the kids want to go skate, and they say, no, we're not going up with hockey sticks. So, it's been kind of a problem anyway, whether that it's a hockey place to go or it's just a fun place. So, in my brain, I was thinking take one out, if we would think of that.
Yeah, I like I say, it just seems like we're adding more things to do, and for 1 month, it just seems like we're adding all this extra cost for the Public Works to do, and for us to come up with some more funds where maybe we could use those funds for Belts Park or whatever, but.
Well, how about we let Dave do the analysis for us?
Yeah.
And bring back the analysis and see
Maybe
whether or not it would be feasible, and then we can make a decision at that point.
Good.
Just a couple comments I would make about the winter events. I do think we're gonna have to think about something that allows us to pivot to a plan B if we see an increase or spike with COVID. I know in other worlds where people are planning conferences and such, they're trying to plan those in a way that allows them to pivot if they need to. So I do think we need to plan something that allows us that flexibility. And I think if we already have some events going on where we could do some type of festival around it to help those events, but also bring people into the community, and I think we should consider it in the February timing. But again, I just think it's gonna be an interesting year. We have to be ready to pivot if we need to, so.
And just a point of clarification, because I think I missed this. So February 19th has both the polar plunge and the snowboard races already?
correct.
So if we wanted to
That
put
would
something
be
around that.
kind of planned by
Okay.
those individual organizations. So those are 2 events already happening that we could piggyback on to help make a bigger community event and bring people down.
We have, excuse me, but we have a shaking of the head from someone who's in charge of one of the events, and so we may want to ask her what her input might be. Susan Young?
Absolutely, welcome.
She's going to be chair of the Rotary Plunge, which may be in question.
Where are they gonna have the snowboard races?
Is it
I'm-
snowboards or snowmobiles?
Snowmobiles.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kids, it's called
snowmobiles.
Kids
That makes a
Ice
lot more
Pro,
sense.
and
Oh.
let me see, while Susan Young speaks, I'll look and see if I have that note here.
It's okay now that I know it's snowmobile. Thank you.
My name is Susan Young, 9950 199th Street, North in Forest Lake. I am the president of the Rotary right now, and will be chairing, if allowed, the Rotary Plunge. However, what I'm hearing right now is that we may not hear about our permit for at least another month. I need to be able to find the sheriffs, probably from Pine County. They book up very far in advance. I need to be able to schedule a tent, and I'm not willing to do either one of those things and put the kind of earnest money down that I would have to, that's non-refundable, if I don't know I'm going to be able to have an event. So if we're not going to hear about our permit request for another month, then I need to go to my board and say, perhaps this is not something we should do this year.
And there might be
Where's
other
that?
logistics.
Where's that permit request? Who's got that?
I'm not sure. I don't have a permit request from the park, so is that
Yes,
city
there
permits
there
or?
is a request
Okay.
that was
Yeah, I
put
guess
in
I'm
online.
not familiar with that, so I'd have to follow up with the staff, but is it a park event permit?
Yes, it was,
Okay,
as Chief Peterson told me to do,
okay.
use of the park, and it was submitted about a month ago.
I can check on it, but it hasn't crossed my desk, so I'll be happy to follow up tomorrow during the staff meeting.
Thank you, I would appreciate that.
Sure, not a problem. Thank you. And Commissioner Geyer, I don't have the time listed. I've had conversations. It's their own independent event, so I think it's like 2 to 4 or sometime in the afternoon. So with that being said, any other comments or feedback? Otherwise, I'll get a group together and we can start mapping out a timeline. So we have deadlines to meet with planning for both events so that we have plenty of time for communications as well.
Moving on to the next one, the downtown revitalization planning.
All right, so I just have a couple quick updates. I have this item A listed, and then I'm just gonna throw in an item B other with a couple things that have just come up. So the city of Forest Lake's currently undergoing a downtown revitalization planning process. This is primarily headed through our EDA, Economic Development Authority Committee. I think you guys are all aware, just high level, that this is happening. The Parks Commission hasn't had to be involved up to date, but it's important to follow along as this, you know, the plans that come up for downtown will obviously could potentially impact the park, the lake, parking and things of that nature. They have been collecting feedback just online so far, which you can get to on our city's website. There's a link to that. You can click on the interactive map and see some of the comments as they relate to parks and the lake. I've read through some of them, so read through most of them, but they're, you know, just check that out when you have time. It's kind of interesting to read what people are saying, mostly good about the parks, and that's a good amenity downtown. So tonight at 7 till 8:30 up in our community room is the first community open house for the downtown planning group. You're welcome, encouraged to attend. There's also a virtual option if that's better for your personal preference. You can, there's a link on our website for the virtual option. Lastly, if you haven't provided any comments on the virtual interactive website, you're welcome to do that as well. So that is happening. Any questions on the downtown planning?
Yeah, they are.
Virtual comments closed.
Closed,
Thank you. You can send them in to the meeting tonight via the virtual link, or I'm happy to forward them on if you email them to me. So, secondly, at our July 21st meeting, City Engineer Ryan Goodman and Engineer Olson from Bolton and Mink presented to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission a very preliminary conversation about our North Shore Circle Parks, East and West, as potential locations for stormwater management for their 2022 street and utility improvement project. And the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission did have consensus to continue in that process, but it was stressed the importance of community input. As they stated, this is a big project, so there's gonna be multiple layers of community engagement. The first public community open house is October 4th from 5:30 till 7 p.m. at our community room here at the city center. I'll send that out in an email so you have that on your calendar, but just found that out that that's their first scheduled activity for that. And as soon as they have some designs as it relates to the park, our engineer will share that with me and I can pass that on to the commission. So that is my other update. And then just lastly, so you guys know, I'm participating this week in our National Recreation and Park Association virtual conference. It's being held in Nashville, Tennessee. Today was the first day of that, and it goes tomorrow and Thursday. I'm participating virtually, which is a really nice option for those who don't want to have to do the travel and expense with that. So a lot of learning sessions, keynote speakers, a lot of information I'll be gathering over the next couple of days. So I will be participating in that. And also our local Minnesota Recreation and Park Association conference in person in Brooklyn Center, October 13th through the 15th. So a couple conferences coming up where I can collect some more knowledge and new resources and share that with you guys as I have them. So just wanted to let you know I'll be spending a little time with that. Other than that, Jackie, do you have any updates tonight? I don't. Okay. So that's it for staff updates. Unless anyone has any questions for me, I'm happy to take them.
Is there a quick update you could get on the arts in the park? One thing I did want to mention in public here, for the commission anyway, is I was down there, I think everyone except one, and on 2 of the occasions, people came up to me to compliment Woody on the job that he does, not only in finding the talent for us, but the way he helps them set up and is there for any problems. In fact, one woman was so impressed, she went up to him and asked, how she could get him to do some event for her or something. But I said it in all my years on the park board, I've never heard anyone compliment the person who was there. And so I just want everybody to know he did a great job and people really appreciated the entertainment that we had.
Thank you. We'll count that as a commissioner update.
Okay. Oh, because I have another one.
Yeah, so I think just before you go on to your next one, I think that's a great point. I think follow up on that. We had we started June, gosh, it feels like forever ago. June 15th was our first Tuesday, so just 2 weeks delayed from our normal schedule transitioning out of the COVID. So I think that was great to get that going as soon as we could. And we did have every week through August 31st. We had one rain out, which was July 6th for the Church of Cash. And then we just decided to, given the nice weather, we had that rescheduled for September 14th. So I think overall it was one of our better years of arts in the park, weather and attendance. And I think the vendors were a huge asset to the event. Woody did a fantastic job. I thought it was a great year, and I think really important that the community had that as a place to come out and gather with family, friends, neighbors, community during the times that we're in. So I think great point to bring up, and I appreciate everyone's help, that made it happen. So.
Well, the only other, I had two small ones. Referencing the Caleb, the gentleman who's going to do the 100-mile walk, they're going to have an opening ceremony at the park on, is it Friday morning, on the 1st?
October 1st, I believe, yes.
So they were happy that they were able to use the park for that, and then the rest of the things will all be over at the American Legion. But again, individually, we want to all support this young man who's walking 100 miles in support of the 100 suicides that have been, the veterans have experienced. And so anyone who wants to walk along the trail at any time, he's going to be straight overnight, and they're going to have cowbells there, so they're looking for people who will just come out and cheer him on at different points. I guess he has a tracking system so you can track where he is. But I think it's a great thing, again, that they'll be at the park for the opening ceremony. And then the last one, I don't know what the situation is with Jackie, or if anyone else has talked about putting together that park guide, a guide for all of our parks, so that we could hand it to someone if they said, what kind of parks do you have? Are we still working on that or not?
I don't know where it is on the project list, because there's obviously a lot of projects for one that have come in. So we can certainly, maybe that's a goal for by the end of this year, to have a complete park project or packet, so that when we come out in the spring, we have everything ready to go.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Any other updates? I have one quick update. A couple of us volunteered to look for starry stonewort invasive species with the Lake Association, and I think there was no findings on Forest Lake or Clear Lake, which is a good thing, but just was a good opportunity to work with the Lake Association and just see how much time and effort that they really dedicate to the lakes, and just wanted to send a thank you to them, because that is one of our most precious community resources, and it was nice to spend a little time with them and see what they did. So
thank you for that.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved. We have time for,
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
we have time to eat before
Thank you,
the next
everybody.
meeting.
Just gonna say. I mean,
Bob will be thrilled.
virtually, but-